NTV.
Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV. My name is Romeo Busiku. We are getting into our Kickstarter conversation of the day. Today is International Freedom of Access to Information. Like I mentioned in my preamble during the show, lack of access to information has been attributed to be one of the major factors hindering the fight against curbing child, early and forced marriages in Uganda, Africa and the whole world. Not only that, we've had a COVID-19 crisis. Lack of information. If you did not have any information about COVID-19, you are affected largely. So access to information has caused so many debilitating effects towards making the right decision. So to talk about this and more, we have Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa. He is the Executive Director for the Africa Freedom Information Center, and he joins me right now in studio. Very good morning, Gilbert.
Thank you. Good morning, Romeo, and good morning, dear listeners.
First off, this is the first time we are observing the International Day for Universal Access to Information. What else should the viewer know about this day? And what does it mean?
Yeah, this day was proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly last year in October 2019. And it was sponsored by 29 countries. And Uganda was actually one of those countries that sponsored this resolution. And the resolution was unanimously adopted and supported by 193 members of the United Nations. Now, this day is very, very important. It is a platform on which all stakeholders in government, in business, citizens, civil society, and government partners are invited to reflect on the status of access to information for every individual and take steps and draw strategies on how to enhance this right. As it is now during this COVID-19 crisis, we note that access to information is the difference between life and death. People need information on prevention, people need information on care, and how to do it safe so that as they care for patients, they don't get infected. But also, information is needed to make sure that resources that governments around the world, government partners have allocated to combat the COVID-19 crisis are put to good use. As many will know, this is a challenged area in many countries, including Uganda.
Of course, this is the theme for the observation of this day. Access to information during a crisis. Not so, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa. Should we, as Uganda, celebrate?
Yes and no. Celebrate in the sense that Uganda has ratified three of the 6 African Union treaties that guarantee the right to information. Uganda has a constitutional right to information under Article 41 of the Constitution, and also has an Access to Information Act. And in fact, it was the 4th country in Africa to adopt this legislation. So these are important milestones to celebrate. This said, there are areas of concern. In January this year, we issued a report to the Speaker of Parliament, a shadow report on the status of access to information implementation in Uganda. We found that, yes, whereas some efforts have been put in place, some agencies are proactively disclosing information, but by and large, the law is not being implemented. For example, all the agencies which we studied, we are routinely refusing to disclose information. They had not put in place systems for receiving and responding to information requests. They are not documenting and compiling statistics so as to enable annual reporting. No minister has complied with Section 43 that requires them to report to Parliament on annual basis on the measures that they are being, their ministries are undertaking to implement this act. So yes, there are areas of celebration, but there's a lot of work to be done because, like I said, in a crisis like we have today of COVID-19, the difference between life and death is access to information. There is a difference as to whether resources that have been allocated to combat the pandemic or not is access to information. Recently, we saw a very concerning headline in one of the newspapers that all the money which had been mobilized from the public to fight the pandemic had been stolen. We have not seen public response by government, whether confirming or denying this fact. So access to information is needed so that government and the whole world can effectively combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
And here comes the pertinent question, Mr. Gilbert. Has government done enough to set up the right tools or the right measures to ensure that people have right access to information?
Yeah, this is a big area of concern. For example, like I said, Section 43 of the Access to Information Act requires each minister to report Parliament on annual basis on requests that have been filed to agencies that they supervise.
I was talking about cases like OTT, stuff like that. Government not doing enough to ensure that people have that right access to information. If you still have OTT during a pandemic, how assured is the government that people are getting this information that they need without such loopholes?
Certainly, OTT makes access to information very costly, and actually the Act says that access should be free. So having OTT and other obstacles makes it more difficult. Secondly, government ought to, each agency under the law is obliged to implement the Access to Information Act. But as it is, no agency has allocated budget to implement this important right. Promotional measures on the right people have to access information and how they can access that information from the different agencies have not been done. And in fact, what is shocking, our shadow report, which we presented to Parliament, we found that even public officials who are supposed to give out information do not know about the obligation to do so.
Would you attribute lack of information to the increase in cases of COVID-19 in Uganda?
Yes, certainly. In a situation where there is no cure, the safest and realistic measure is prevention. And to prevent infection, information is needed. And yes, therefore, I can say that to a great extent, lack of access to information is contributing to escalation of infections. And many Ugandans know that there is a lot of doubt. There are lots of theories and misconceptions regarding COVID-19.
What kind of theories and misconceptions?
Some people say that this disease does not exist, that it is a scheme by public officials to steal from the public. So you can see that the information gaps that ought to be filled.
Indeed. So we've been talking about what we haven't achieved, but what has government done right? What have we achieved?
Yes, of course, one of the things that government has done is to put in place the law, the Access to Information Act. In 2005, 2011, they put in place the Access to Information Regulations. Some of the agencies have assigned communication or information officers. Also various ministries and departments have websites, and on this website there's some information. We urge them to indicate on these websites and other platforms how people can ask for information. We also take note of agencies like PPDA who actually have been very proactive in disclosing information around procurement, encouraging procuring entities to publish data on the government procurement portal. Although not all agencies are publishing, but we commend these efforts of the PPDA.
All right, let's talk about recommendations as we wrap up in the next 3 minutes. How best can we increase information proliferation among our young people and the whole world?
Yeah, government of Uganda needs to respect its obligations under treaties. Article 62 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights requires every state party to file reports every 2 years to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Uganda is rated by 8 years. So we recommend that the government needs to do that. Secondly, in our report, we have recommended amendment of the Act to bring it in line with the African the model law on access to information. So we call upon Parliament to expedite this process. And we ask government to allocate budget or agencies so that implementation of this right is enhanced, and also, of course, training officials, improving records management, and making a political statement at a very high level, maybe presidential level, that information is right, and every agency, every chief executive officer is obliged and required to comply with this law will be very, very important.
Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa is the Executive Director for the Africa Freedom Information Center, and we've been having this conversation about law information proliferation in Uganda that has made it so hard to combat the pandemic, that has made it so hard for people to make the right decisions. When people talk about COVID-19 is a hoax, that means there's law information proliferation among members of the public, and government has to ramp up those efforts to ensure that people are properly sensitized, but through those communication channels, which are being which are being mastered by OTT. If there was no OTT, there would be ready access by all members of the public to actually get this information on social media and the internet. But as it is, OTT has made it so hard for people to make informed decisions just because it's too costly. My name is Romeo Busiku, and you're still watching Morning at NTV. We do have one final conversation with Mr. Enoch Chibamu, the chairperson of the Uganda National Building Review Board, on the issue of the new structures. Yes, like I mentioned before during my preamble, if you're putting up a house in Koboko and someone is putting up another house in Kololo, yes, you would have to pay the same amount of money. It is a uniform fee. But why? Mr. Enoch shall be letting us know about that and a lot more after this short break. We'll be right back.